Yes, hello, my friends, and welcome back to another very special walk and talk. You can see we've got a guest here today. This is Joe Polish. What's up, Joe?
Living the dream over here.
So we're super excited. You know that we've talked a lot about the organization called the Genius Network. I've shared some of my biggest takeaways from many of these events. This is the guy who founded it. This is the greatest connector in the world. It's Joe Polish, and we're super excited to talk to him today. He's got a new book out. I've already mentioned it. It's What's in It for Them. So hopefully you have already got your copy about it, but we're going to dive into it. Joe's been very generous, and he's given us some time today to talk about kind of what went into the book and how it was inspired, and so we're going to dive into all of it.
Perfect.
But our first question...
Thank you for the kind words, by the way.
No,
I'll try to live up to the nice things you say about me.
We're super grateful for you. I'm grateful for you. And the first place we wanted to start is I was asking Joe about how he starts his mornings. Mm-hmm. And so we've got the red light.
Yeah, so
behind us.
So this is red light therapy, and this is a really cool one. You can hang it somewhere, and I have a thing called the sand dune stepper, and basically I usually am barefoot when I do this and naked,
Yeah.
and you just kind of step on the thing, and it literally is a, and I just pulled the plug out here. I'm going to not show you the best way to do this, but let me just put it back in. There we go. But yeah, you just kind of stand on this, and the sand dune stepper is really cool. How do you say it? Proprioception?
Okay.
Yeah, it helps you with your balance, and you can listen to podcasts. You can just do whatever while getting some red light therapy at the same time, because I tend to figure out how to leverage stuff if you're going to, we all kind of do that. How do you leverage ideas? You walking and talking is a form of leverage.
Right.
Because if you think of, entrepreneurs as an example, or people that are in the results-based economy, leverage is maximum results, least amount of effort, and productivity is maximum results, least amount of time. So looking at, leverage and looking at productivity, this is just a good way to do it. So that's one of the ways I start my morning. Not every time, but I do it probably 3 times a week. What I've been doing. I have a Peloton, I have other workout stuff, but also some days I'm better than others. Sometimes I meditate. I have a cold plunge in the backyard.
Right there.
So I'm big on doing cold plunging and saunas and that sort of stuff. So
One of the most, I think, interesting things that I have taken away from my time in Genius, and I think when I talk to other people about Genius that they're most surprised about, is how much time we spend at the annual event and all the monthly meetings on self-care.
Right.
And breathing and sleeping and all of those things, because it feels like, well, can you talk about that? Like, why do we spend so much time on that?
Okay. So one of my favorite quotes it's a proverb, which is, he or she who has their health has 1,000 dreams. He or she who does not have their health has only one. So the reason that we're talking right now, the reason we're able to pursue goals and run businesses and stuff is we're not laid up in a hospital somewhere.
Right.
And depending on your life, if you've been around either family members, like both my parents have died, I've been the primary caretaker of people while they were dying. It's very difficult emotionally and in so many ways when you lose a loved one. What it also does is give you perspective of people that have really taken care of their health and other people that have neglected it. Because no matter how successful you become financially or how big your status gets, if you have a great reputation or whatever, I know quite a few billionaires personally that are friends, a handful, and I know a lot of people that are successfully wealthy, and I know some that are miserable and some that are in poor shape and others that are in better physical shape, and every single one of those people would give every penny that they own, everything they own, material-wise, externally, if they ever lost their health or to get it back. And so what else is more important than that? Right. And I mean, you're a testament to this. You eat very clean, you exercise every day, and so it's an important thing. So health, wealth, and ELF is what Genius Network is. It's not just physical health, but it's mental health. And both of us speak to addiction. I've been in recovery for many years because I nearly killed myself being a drug addict years ago, which is something we can talk about if you want. But basically health, mental and physical, wealth, not just making money but not losing it, and then what I call ELF, which are doing things or projects in developing a business that's easy, lucrative, and fun, which is ELF, versus half, which is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. So, I'd rather have ELF in my life than half. And if you ever lose your health, things are not going to be ELF.
Right. So yeah, and people think, that when you join a high-level mastermind, that maybe you're only going to be learning about, like the Swiss Army techniques, like the guru stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just surprised at how often we're talking about breathing. I mean, you've had some of the most world-renowned experts come in, and we spent an hour talking about breathing or about meditation. And you were just on a sabbatical,
Yeah, I took a 1 year sabbatical last year because it's the $1 million racehorse, which remind me if I forget. We'll talk about that because it applies to you if you're a person that really wants to perform at your highest level. But yeah, I took a 1 year sabbatical, and that's a whole nother.
Yeah, and one of the things that you said, one of your takeaways was that the things that deliver the most ROI, the highest ROI, were the fundamentals, right? It's breathing, it's sleeping better, it's dealing with your anxiety and your stress.
And things that often don't cost any money or very little in order to set up the conditions in order to be able to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so this is where you start your day.
Yeah. So this room is where I start my day, and I mean, often
And we've got a Peloton over here.
Yeah, I got a tonal in the other room, but I usually will go to a gym to work out. There's a couple gyms. Like I have memberships at 3 different gyms, and I have an 11,000 square foot building where the Genius headquarters are, and I actually have a gym there and various different stuff. But I'll tell you, like, if there's anything that I would say splurge on, it's the things that will help you facilitate your health, like eating better quality food, having different places to work out. So, because people are like, do you work out the same time every day? No, I mean, like sometimes I'm extremely busy, other times I'm traveling, so I do the very best I can. Do I meditate every day? No, I've gone up and down. There are some, I got trained in transcendental meditation in 2013, and there's been periods where I've meditated every single day, 20 minutes twice a day for a year straight, and then I'll forget, or I'll take time off, or life shifts. But one thing that I am very consistent with over at least the last year that has had more of a significant impact in anxiety and how I mentally feel is breathing, doing saunas. Like right now, I'm probably doing 20 minutes of saunas, at least if I had to average it out over the last 6 months, 5 times a week.
Wow.
And I will do a cold plunge almost every day.
Wow.
So that really helps. Now, if I am traveling, it's much harder, so you do cold showers and stuff like that. And most people think that's nuts, dude.
Yeah.
I hated the cold, freaking hated it. But if you think about life, you, me, and Robert, all of us, we want more woo and less ah. I mean, that's pretty much what life is. And so some things, like getting into a cold plunge, in the beginning, you're like, but the woo, because of the dopamine hit you're going to get out of it, is huge. Because it like, for instance, I've become friends with Dr. Anna Lemke, who wrote a book called Dopamine Nation.
Right.
And I'm helping her with a workbook for Dopamine Nation. And so much of how we feel, our ambition, our striving has to do with dopamine. And if you're staring at a screen all day long, or you're lacking sleep, your dopamine is going to be depleted, and you're going to look for kind of artificial ways. It's real dopamine, but it's not the best ways, like eating sugar or drinking alcohol or doing drugs or looking at the internet. And it could be porn, or it could be anything that gives you a dopamine hit. But there are better natural ways to create dopamine. And like cold plunging is like a 200% dopamine increase. Sex, I think, is 150%. Chocolate is a 55%.
Right.
Cocaine is 225%. Not the best way to get dopamine. Amphetamines are 1,000%.
Yeah.
So you wonder, why do people do drugs? Why do people pursue things? Because they're looking for dopamine. Why are they staring at screens all day long, or phones? Because those are little dopamine cash registers. So if you can find other ways in your life to get dopamine and to also not become dependent on it, then you're more likely to have better rituals. Because the rituals that you have right now are totally based on what they make you feel biochemically.
Right, and these are the foundational things that even in your like higher level groups, right? People are still focusing on optimizing these things.
Right.
So it provides performance for all of your entrepreneurial activities.
Yeah, because I mean, like, so Stephen Kotler is one of my buddies who's going to come to Genius Network, or we're going to be doing a meeting with him for all of our Genius Network members. And this guy's one of the foremost world experts on getting into a flow state. And if you think about how to operate as a human, whatever your understanding of flow is, that optimal place where you are fully connected, you're totally engaged. In some cases, time, you're not even aware of time, you're just in it. It could be in exercise, it could be in art, it could be in entrepreneurship, it could be in dance, singing. Everything we do as humans is a form of expression. So if you can express yourself in a way to where you're feeling aligned and connected and blissful and awesome and excited, that's way better than expressing an angst and depression and fear, because you're either reacting to life or you're responding to life. And so the first book that became really popular in the state of flow was written by a guy named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He wrote it, several decades ago, and it was the Flow, the Psychology of Achievement. But they never at the time really knew, how do you get into a flow state? So now Stephen Kotler has just been studying this for years, and he created this whole project, the Flow Genome Project, and he's found the most effective ways to actually get into flow. And so what I try to do is bring that to my Genius Network members, because no matter how smart they are at marketing or business or finance or tech, it's the human that has to do that stuff. Right. Having our brains and our mouths think of what we want, say we're going to do something, but getting our bodies to actually follow through with it and be congruent is the key. So in Genius Network, I try to sell people what they want and give them what they need. Yeah. Usually they want more money, they want status, they want best-selling books, they want to have more clients. But if you can build a better entrepreneur, the likelihood of them then implementing and utilizing those contacts, those strategies. So yeah, I think of, and even if someone's not in Genius Network, I recommend, like I write about it in my book, What's in It for Them, is to have your own Genius Network. Like people that tap into you, they utilize your skills and capabilities for their Genius Network. So a Genius Network is having people that have skills or capabilities that help you get to where you want to go, and combining those together and collaborating. That's what a Genius Network is. Way different than just normal networking and passing out business cards or having a big social media following. I mean, I know people that have thousands of people that follow them online, but if they got in trouble, they wouldn't even know who to really call that could get them out of it. It's more about quality than it is quantity. Even though you could have a very big Genius Network, you can also have a small night, what do you call it? What's that term I'm looking for?
Like a niche?
Well, yeah, just like a tight knit group of people that can help you solve anything that you want. If you want to be a better parent, who are the top people that you could talk to? And if you want to get in better physical shape, if you want to write a book, any area of life, if you had the right people with skills and capabilities and you've identified who they are, or at least the skill, then you can find the person to do it. So I try to get people to think like that. So think of it in your life, who is your Genius Network? And in order to have a Genius Network, you have to be a Genius Networker. So it's something that you are. So be, do, have. If you if you are being a Genius Networker and you do Genius Networking, you will have a Genius Network. So what the hell does that mean? It means that you always approach people with the question, which is the title of my book, What's in It for Them? You don't have an agenda other than to be helpful and useful. And we all have, quote unquote, an agenda. Sometimes I just want people to like me. Sometimes I want to be really useful. What I mean by don't have an agenda is I'm not married to it needs to have a particular outcome. Like we all want something. I want something, you want something. You wouldn't even be watching this if you didn't want some sort of insight or entertainment or whatever. So we all want something, but my whole thing is make sure when you want something from somebody, make sure that your give is equal or greater than the want, because then people will tend to like you. If you think about all of the friends and relationships we have, the people we like, that if they call us or text us or whatever, we're happy to get it. It's because they have a giver energy. They don't have a taker energy. Right. And the people that drive us away or the people that annoy us are people that the only time you hear from them is when they want something that's greater than what they're offering to give it. And that is the difference between a giver and a taker. So my whole thing is be a giver. Whatever you want in life, help the right people get what they want. Zig Ziglar had that line, you can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want, with the caveat that you can help other people get what they want that won't do a damn thing for you. And some people you will help them get what they want and they will abuse you or take advantage of you. So my whole thing is to, hopefully for young entrepreneurs, there's a lot of people that are teaching hustling and selling and marketing, but a lot of them, they're good, they have great capabilities, but they have really bad characters. And so my goal is to build a better human being, build a better character. And part of that, you live it, you demonstrate it, and you don't have to be perfect, you just keep working on it. And part of that is your intention. You just go into every sort of encounter with what's in it for them. How do I help? What's their pain? How do I remove pain for them? How can I be most useful? And sometimes it's just simply making someone laugh. Sometimes it's being a goofball, because humans want fun. They want entertainment. So yeah, I can ramble on forever about this nonsense.
Amazing. Yeah. So I've got some more questions for you. Can we take a look at? You want to show us what else you have?
Sure.
Let's you got go. Some interesting things.
Well, this house, I've got a lot of bizarre artwork around here. Like you can kind of see it in the peripheral. And I've got my wonderful girlfriend's mother who's over
Yeah,
here. She's visiting us from Malaysia. So yeah, look, turn this around here. So
Okay.
one of my artist friends. So I created a thing called Artists for Addicts. You can check it out at artistsforaddicts.com. And I want to use art as a force for good. So I've done a lot of stuff with the only artistic skill that I have is throwing pottery. When I was a drug addict in high school, the only thing that made my brain escape, other than doing drugs, was doing pottery. And unfortunately, I didn't know how to deal with the trauma of my childhood, which included a lot of abandonment, a lot of physical and mental and sexual abuse. And so I used drugs as a coping mechanism for the pain because, you know, like that line from the opposite of addiction is connection. And I was very disconnected. So art allows people to connect with themselves. And right underneath it is a 1956, wait, no, this is a 1961. The house was built in 1956. 1961 Lincoln, and I bought the whole car years ago for $500 at a junkyard, and then I had an artist turn it, and it cost 10 grand to actually turn it into art. So the headlights turn on and everything, which is kind of cool.
Great.
But yeah, I just got random stuff, and I like modern, I like mid-century modern, I like contemporary, and then we have mannequins behind us here, and all kinds of different stuff. While we go here, I'll read some of these. This is one of my favorite pieces of art, and I'll just read some of these, but I often come up here. It says, man formulates goals for the future. Man seeks wealth. Man chooses the obvious. Man counts his fortune. Man suffers. Man finds himself digging his own grave. Man sends for help. Man turns out to be codependent. Man cleans up. Man spots the solution. Man heals. And then it keeps going on and on. It's this different, like I can just sit and read these things, and they're these thought bubbles that'll pop into my head about how I'm dealing with life, how people deal with life, and there's some that are positive and negative. And yeah, I mean, I often have, art is very interesting. This is a mannequin that my artist friend Layla Parnian did, and we actually are creating this mannequin project for, and she gives proceeds of the mannequins that are sold to Genius Recovery, which is my 501c3, and it's a educational platform, and I don't make any money off of it. We give out free information to people that struggle with addiction, and the goal is to change the global conversation about how people view and treat addicts with compassion instead of judgment, and find the best forms of treatment that have efficacy and share that with the world. And so underneath this mannequin is all of these sort of fear, abandonment, hurt that I wrote on this mannequin, and then we covered it with art. And if anyone watching this has an Oculus headset, we've actually put this process into virtual reality. And we have an app called Retreat that just went on the Oculus App Store. It's the only educational app with meditation and things related to finance and addiction recovery. And you can see Layla, and if you have an Oculus headset, you can do this experience in VR with your own mannequin of you, and you write the trauma that you've experienced in your life, and then you can cover it up and paint it. It's a way for people to just kind of get it out of their system, because you're sick as your secrets, and if you're able to just express your, the thing that caused you pain, that's the way to do it. So yeah,
right. And there was a whole demonstration of this, right, in the movie.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Someone, we did a. What's cool is we've done a couple of films, and one is called Black Star. It's not out yet, but we're going to release it soon. If anyone wants to get on that list, it's artistsforaddicts.com. Artists with an S, for addicts with an S.com. And someone also made a movie about my life called Connected, the Joe Polish story. And which is kind of weird talking about people making movies about my life.
Well, it's an excellent movie. It's an excellent film.
No, thank you. Yeah, and I literally did not do it, and I was really worried when it first came out. I'm like, I hope this is not just this total propaganda fluff piece. And they did a pretty darn good job. And someone did it anonymously for me, and I didn't know who it was until we actually played the movie in front of 300 and something people. And it's called Connected, the Joe Polish story. So connectedthemovie.com if you want to watch a trailer for that.
Yeah, and
without sounding overly promotional.
No, and it's amazing. It's really good. Okay, so we have a copy of your book.
Yeah.
Now, so as we have heard from you, you've got an entire, sort of life of experience.
Yeah.
What prompted you to write this book? You've written other books, life gifts. You've got a bunch of other work that you've done. Why this? Why now?
Well, okay, so the reason I wrote What's in It for Them is Hay House is the publisher. They wanted me to write a book. I've never done a mainstream published book. I've written a couple of books on addiction recovery, and I wrote a book called Life Gives to the Giver that we give away for free at joesfreebook.com. And so, I spent 2 years writing this book, and I have never, I've created a lot of content. I've interviewed over 1,000 people. There's not a single piece of information that I have spent more time on than writing this book, What's in It for Them. I wrote it for myself. I will not be one of these authors that say, I just wanted to share my lovely ideas with the world because I wanted to give back and all that sort of nonsense. I mean, there's some truth to that, of course. I hope, I really want to share my ideas. The thing, though, is I wanted to really, what's that? Is it Socrates or who said an unexamined life is not worth living? Well, an unlived life is not worth examining. That's the flip side of that. So I wanted to really look at what have I done in my life that has worked well for connecting with people, because people often refer to me as like a great connector. I would not say that about myself. It's really hard for me to even fathom some of the things that people say. I know I connect people, but I just do it. It's like telling a fish that you're really good at like swimming. It's like, I'm a fish. What do you think about swimming? So I very much like connecting people with ideas and other people if it's useful, and I try to be very thoughtful about how I curate it. However, I've done really well with marketing ideas and different people that I've met, but I've also helped other people build and grow their businesses that ended up betraying me or lying or being complete con artists. And I also deal with a lot of addicts. I spend about half my time helping people that struggle with addiction. And you're dealing with a community of people, if you're in that sort of work, that lie, cheat, steal. You understand this. You're a lawyer, right? You're dealing with people where they may not be bad humans, but they have done bad things.
Right.
And you think, what caused them to start doing that? Why did they do that? If you think about winners in life, winners find ways to win. And if you think about people that are losing, they have found ways to lose. So I wanted to really take a look at what have I done that was successful, and what are the cautionary tales, so that I could actually develop my spidey senses as I continue to, because I'm not done with life. There's a lot of stuff that I want to do. I'm an ambitious guy. I want to create a lot of stuff. So I wanted to really document, what have I done well? What have I not done well? How have I connected in ways that have been most helpful? And where have I wasted my time? So like the first chapters about being a pain detective, because I believe one of the best ways to bond and connect with people is find out where they're suffering and ask, how can I help? So how can I help reduce human suffering? Because a lot of times people want to find, hey, what do we have in common that we really love? And that's a great way to connect with people. And that's easy oftentimes. But if you can really help someone get out of pain, and you can offer a connection, a solution, or just be a companion to them, you will develop rapport with that person at a much deeper level, especially if you're sincere and genuine about it. Because nothing about what I recommend is bullshitting people, or flattery works, of course, but it's like cotton candy. It's a bit fake, right? It's not real. And so what are the real ways that you can connect with a person? So the first chapter's on pain, and I had to really look at my own life, like how did I develop this ability to connect with people? And the more I thought about it, I was like, I really come at things with, I often look at people and look for the hurt. Where are they hurting? So I can remove that, because I hate seeing people in pain. And then when it comes to the second chapter, is about time, how you spend your time. So I call it TAMI, the things that you can spend your time, attention, money, effort, and energy. And how do you protect your TAMI? And the introduction to the book, I give credit to How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That's one of my favorite books, and it was written many years ago. And so here's the thing, though. Do we want to just win friends and influence people, or do we want to win the right friends and influence the right people? Because influence is dangerous if you're using influence to influence people or become friends with people that are assholes, right? So it's like, how do you align yourself with people that want to be aligned with you? Do you really want to work on relationships, or do you want to find relationships that work? And so for me, I just squandered so much of my life taking my talents, much of them that I spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, a lot of energy to develop, and I would throw pearls before swine. I would just waste them on people that were unappreciative, people, and in many cases were abusive. So part of it is I want to take the givers of the world and help them boundary themselves against the takers. And anyone that happens to read my book that has taker energy, I hope something clicks and they realize this is not the best way to actually live a life. You're going to get a lot further ahead in your life if you are operating for being a giver, not a taker. Because, you know, one of my books is called Life Gives from the Giver. Well, the other part of that is life gives to the giver and takes from the taker.
Yeah.
So takers may initially make money. They may get the girl, they may get the guy, they may get the status, they may get the deal. But long term, you know, if you are going through life leaving shrapnel and blowing people up, there comes a point where you have a lot of enemies, a lot of people dislike you, and unless you're void of empathy, and I mean, I think the people that won't like the message of my book are takers, narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, because I talk shit about them. Not that I say they're quote unquote horrible people, it's that you don't want to deal with them because they're going to hurt you. And if you are a giver, you will get taken advantage of. So part of my book is like, well, how do you process that? How do you process hurt? How do you still go through the world enthusiastically when you have been betrayed, when you've been lied to, when one of your best friends or family members has hurt you, when you've been raped or you've been molested? I mean, I was raped as a child. From my own perspective, I understand what that did to me and how it led me into, you know, a couple of decades of addiction that was very painful because I never knew how to cope with that trauma. So hopefully, you know, you're not going to take away everyone's pain. And I even say in the book, you know, you don't want to handicap your kids by making their life too easy. You don't want to take away the gift of somebody's challenges and their pain. I mean, people do need to go through pain, and often pain is a great messenger. However, you don't want to go through unnecessary pain. You don't want to just suffer and struggle just for the sake of doing that. So there's a dance here of, you know, how to really address things without being codependent, without being an enabler. You know, how do you really take care of yourself and simultaneously take care of the people that you care about and also care about you? And so there's a lot to it. I mean, I think the number one thing from people I had relationships with when they read the book was like, wow, I didn't realize you're going to go this deep with some of the stuff. So I went through every single line of this book 6 times. I mean, and I try to be a prolific guy, but this book, I took a lot of time with it. I wrote the first draft of it. I literally scrapped the whole thing. I'd written the entire book and I didn't like it. But what I did though, is because of that first draft, I had a whole bunch of insight that I never would have gotten had I done that. So I will tell people, and a lot of times they have a hard time, how would I ever write a book? Or they admire people that write books. I mean, I know just because you write a book doesn't mean you're special. It depends on what you put into it. You know, anyone could slap together a book. So in no way do I want anyone to think there's anything special about writing a book. I just tried to write a book that would be a domino. At the end of every chapter I have the dominoes, because I think of the first domino, who's the person or the activity or the thing that changed the trajectory of your life. And everybody that's a reader has probably read a book that changed their life, that was really beneficial and helpful. And, you know, and that's why I wanted to write a book like that. And I'm sure you've read books that just suck. And so I tell people, you know, if you resonate with my book, great. And I try to end every chapter with the dominoes and the things that I'll make the most difference. And I wanted to write a timeless book, not a timely book. So I hope that this book is around 100 years from now, like a book like How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, I think it will be. I read it. I have been sort of internalizing it. But what has been cool about my process is I've got to see it in sort of reverse. So like I got to see you live it.
Yeah.
And I joined Genius in 2018. So, you know, I've been watching you talk about Tammy, talk about Elf, talk about Half, talk about being the person that, you know, they want to answer the phone for, you know, when you call somebody, leading with value. I've watched you do your text messaging videos, right? Your reciprocity, your giving.
Yeah.
And then it all just shows up in the book. And now for me, it's like, oh, that's what's happening there. Like, you know, I get to see it all come to fruition because it's like the blueprint, like you're releasing the blueprint for decades of connecting.
No, thank you for saying that. And that's what I really wanted to do. A lot of my people are like, God, now I understand why you do what it is you do. Because I would just do stuff, but I didn't think too much about, you know, one of the chapters is get as close to it in person as possible.
Right.
And the pandemic, you know, really limited a lot of physical interaction, but then things like Zoom and more video calls and that sort of stuff and people were forced into it. But I'll tell you, I had the very first iPhone in 2007. The day it came out, I had the very first iPhone. And at first, you couldn't do audio messages, you couldn't do video messages. And there used to be a thing called a flip video. And the flip video had like a little USB thing that would pop out and shoot a video. You stick it into your laptop or your computer, and then you would take the video and you could email it to someone. And then the moment they started making it to where you can send an audio text, you can send a video text. I was using that stuff, 10 years ago, longer than that. I mean, I remember first doing this. I think the flip video probably came out, I don't know, maybe 2006 or something like that. But right around 2010, I was getting so many people, I would say, send an audio email or an audio text or send a video. And some phones at the time still couldn't do it. But I would just do these things. And because I would say there are certain things you can say with tonality or with a sense of humor. You can say, I love you, or I like you, or I love you. Just the tone of your voice. It's not even what you say, it's how you say it. And so much of that gets hidden by text. And so if you can't be in person with someone, get as close to in person as possible. It's like what you're doing right now.
Right.
If you think of the people that watch this and like you, they see you walking around, noise, background. I mean, hell, I hear the damn washing machine in the background, which is funny. What's been going through my head while I've been doing is like, I should have probably closed that door back there.
It's real. This is the real.
Yeah.
This is real.
But that's the whole point. That's
right.
it. It's to be real and not to put on an act. And if someone's like, well, I'm scared, I'm shy, I'm introverted. Well, welcome to the club, because people think I'm this introverted person that likes going. I mean, I get nervous at cocktail parties. I don't like that sort of stuff. I've learned how to kind of navigate through it. And most people would never know at this point, because I was definitely afraid of public speaking. I couldn't even ask anyone out on a date in high school. I was so deathly afraid of rejection. But then I started realizing that, I started like training my brain. Don't look at it as rejection. Just look at it as taking a survey of who has good taste and who doesn't. And I say that jokingly, because a lot of people that rejected me probably had really good taste at the time. But the thing though is that whatever you fear and don't face controls you. Whatever you fear and face, you can at least control it, or at least get better at it. And initially, doing an audio message or a video might be awkward. But like, how good are you now on video compared to the first time you did it?
Well, as you were speaking, we didn't even have Watching the Watchers show, the live show, when I joined Genius Network, right? I've gotten a lot of confidence, I've gotten a lot of support, a lot of ideas from the Genius Network, from the group, from you, from all these lessons that are in this book. And, there were times when I remember a conversation with you when I asked you a question and you just gave me a quick answer, value on the spot, basically everything you talk about. Yeah. And my whole life has changed, right, as a result of some of these fears that I had. Yeah. Some of the progress that I have, made, just grinding, working, giving value, being authentic. All of the things that I've watched you do and live, right. I just try to take some of the stuff that fits and use it. And it's been a wild journey. It's been a lot of fun, and I feel like I'm a lot more in alignment, providing a lot more value, finding that unique ability. And it's sort of like what we talked about at the beginning. When I came into Genius, I thought we were going to learn a bunch about email lists or marketing or pay-per-click campaigns, or because you're a marketing genius, right? I mean, you've got a whole background. You've helped many people sell probably billions of dollars worth of stuff. Yeah. And that's kind of the exciting thing. But you come in and you realize it's sort of more about your thinking. It's about some of the twisted thinking that you have about what's in it for me, right, versus what's in it for them. And so it's been an amazing experience. But honestly, I don't think that a lot of these growth, these jumps would have been possible without that support.
Thanks for saying that. And I also think a lot of them wouldn't be possible if I told people in the beginning, this is what we're actually going to deal with. Right. Because oftentimes there's bait and switch where you're kind of ripping people off. You're making it. See, I always say from a marketing standpoint, hype used ethically is massive enthusiasm for what you're selling. Hype used unethically is lying, bullshitting, misleading, exaggerating. Hype usually has a negative connotation attached to it. However, enthusiasm covers many deficiencies. And if you at least show up very enthusiastic, which is different than lying, which is different than being incompetent. I mean, you can, in the beginning, like if you want to start a YouTube channel, you're going to bumble your way through it. There's a lot of stuff you have to learn, for everything from lighting to sound to what to say to how to say it. I mean, I still ramble, like, even during this time we've been talking, I could probably cut this shit in half the time and say it, but whatever. I mean, it's like, it's this line from 12 Steps, it's progress, not perfection. Yep. The more you do it, though, the better that you get. And there are certain things, like if you're a fighter pilot, you want to be completely dialed in and accurate.
Right.
There are certain things where you can be willing to make mistakes. And in the world of relationships and developing relationships, we're all going to have fear. Mostly women, although some of my male friends say this also, but you'll often hear people that are single and they want to meet someone. They're like, I want to meet someone that doesn't play games. We've all heard that, right? So what does that really mean, though? It means I don't want to get hurt. But humans play games. Unfortunately, people play games. And what I mean by that is, you don't know people that you meet in whatever encounter that you meet another human. They could be lying to you, they could be a serial killer, they could have ill intentions. So people putting on their best face, or not really sharing everything about their life is just prudent. I mean, it's a way to protect yourself.
Right.
So when you get to develop rapport with someone, and rapport is trust with comfort. You can develop rapport quickly. Trust, though, takes a little bit of time to really know someone. And so when you not only trust someone, but you feel comfortable with them, you have rapport. And in the beginning, when you first meet someone, like a job interview, or you meet someone at a club or whatever, wherever you're at, they're not going to say the same thing in the same way to that person the first time they meet them than they might 6 months down the road when you're more comfortable with them. And that's okay, because those are situational behaviors. Like, most people have gone to church, most people have drank beer, but most people don't drink beer in church. Okay, that's a situational behavior. Situational ethics, though, are what you got to be careful of, where people, they try to act honest in one situation, but then you see them lying somewhere else. And so I'm always looking not just for the red flags in people, but I'm looking for the yellow flags. And when it comes to learning how to do anything, it's like, well, what do you need solved? In your life, how do you know what book to read, what video to watch, what podcast to listen to, what training to get, what education to pursue? I ask myself a question: what needs solved? Like, out of all the things in my life, how do I solve one problem that solves 50 problems?
Yeah.
So for instance, if you are having trouble with your mood, if you are having trouble with your diet, if you are having trouble with focus, if you're feeling overwhelmed, those are all kinds of different areas that you can look to improve and solve those. But what if you're only sleeping 4 hours a night?
Right.
If you solve that one problem, then you're probably going to eat cleaner. You're probably going to exercise and work out. You'll have better focus. You'll be in a better mood because you're not going to be depleted. Your cortisol is not going to be up. You'll biochemically change yourself. You'll have a better attitude. You'll be more funny. So it's like, how do you solve one problem that solves 5 problems, solves 10 problems, that solves 50 problems? And for many people, if you quit drinking coffee or as much, you might have like all kinds of other problems that will disappear, such as sleep, such as anxiety, such as digestive issues.
Right.
But often people, we live in a world where everyone's treating the fruit, but they're not looking at the root. And so my whole thing is like, if you want to be better at relationships, what is the root foundational things to do? First of it is, don't lie. Don't lie to people. It's like that Jordan Peterson thing, tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Right? So, so all of these things, my book is really a capability book that teaches a bunch of capabilities, that the intention behind it is a character book. But if I just said, buy this book because I want you to be a better human being, and it's not like, I'm not some philanthropical, people will argue because I've raised a lot of money for foundations and stuff. So
right.
However, it's not like I'm some angel here that's just doing this stuff. I mean, I do stuff with addiction recovery because it helps me in my own recovery. If I didn't do that stuff, I would be less empathetic. So I purposely strive to do things and put myself in situations that, like, if I would be very incongruent if I'm telling people to work out and do all these other things if I was not doing them myself. And you know what? If I wasn't talking about doing these things, if I wasn't demonstrating it, I would not have as much of a reason to hold myself up to the standard. So in a lot of ways, we set up the conditions that allow us to live the way that we want to live. And if you are, in 12-step groups, there's this saying that they'll often say to newcomers, that will come into the group, and they sometimes are defensive, or they're cocky, or they think they figured it out really quickly because they read a book, or they got some insight. And someone will say, well, your best thinking got you here. You've heard that before. Mm-hmm. Your best thinking got you here. Well, we're all that way, right? Wherever you're at in your life right now, your best thinking got you there. So you either need to do better thinking, and you need to learn different stuff, expose yourself to a different environment, and you need to learn something new, or, and I talk about this in my book, oftentimes you don't need to learn anything, you need to unlearn stuff. You need to unlearn that treating a person a certain way is going to get you the result that you want. You need to unlearn some of your, unconscious conditioning, which is way more difficult. Yeah. People operate on the peripheral. They'll join the gym, they'll get their hair done, they'll get a new car, they'll join a club. That's outside of the puzzle. Those are like, if you had to look at your life as a giant puzzle, outer edge puzzle work is not that hard. People do it all day long. They try different things. But to go to a therapist, or to leave a relationship that's toxic, or to learn or to deal with something that you've not dealt with, and you go to that inner puzzle, every other puzzle piece in your life changes. So my whole thing is like, how do we get to the core and do the deep core work? And oftentimes that takes time. But there's ways that you can make it easier. For one, humor. If you think about the people that you can laugh the most with, those are the people you enjoy being the most with. If you see a couple that's at a restaurant and they're not laughing together, they're just looking at their phones, they're kind of miserable, there's a good chance that they just don't have enough fun in their life. They don't have enough rapport. They're not on the same page. And so my whole thing is like, infuse as much fun and joy and comedy that you can in your life, especially if your life is difficult. Because when you're going through a painful part of life, and who isn't, right? They're like the last 2 years, and this is the unfortunate thing, and I have to remind myself of this too, is there's at least 2 or 3 billion, maybe more people on the planet right now whose dream would come true to just switch places with me and Robert, and probably maybe even you, just for a day. Because there are people that are, dealing with levels of oppression, people that are incarcerated in horrible conditions, people that are being abused. And so I often, think like, okay, don't lose, even when life is difficult, give yourself some damn perspective. And when life is really, really difficult and you're really hurting, one of the best ways to help with that is to go to help someone who's in a worse condition than you, or in a similar condition to you. And it is to me, it's so counterintuitive, but I've proven it so many times myself that when I feel like my life sucks, and there's been stages where I've been generous and helpful and caring and loving, I feel like I'm in one of those places today, and most of the time in the last few years of my life. But I've had some shit shows over the last few years of my life where I've literally didn't want to exist. I was in deep pain, and there are times where we're selfish and self-centered, and probably not caring about anyone except our own, lot in life. And so what I try to remember is that if my life sucks, where do I find the humor? Where do I find the joy? Because it was funny, one of our Genius Network members, a guy named Joel Weldon, he's now 81 years old.
Amazing.
Yeah, this is such a cool dude.
Guy, yeah.
One of the original founders of the National Speakers Association, just this awesome dude. And his daughter, Jenny, we're at a dinner a couple weeks ago, and she said this line that I used to say 10 years ago, and I totally forgot about it until till she said it. And I didn't come up with it, I just heard it before. And she literally is a professional speaker, but she does comedy. And she said, what is comedy? It's pain plus time equals comedy. And I'm like, oh my God, you just reminded me of that. So wherever you are in your life, think about some area of your life that sucks right now, and you're dealing with it. You're dealing with a person that drives you crazy. Maybe you lost a lot of money. Maybe you're in a real struggling position. You've been there before. We all have. And there are things that you hated them when you were going through them. But then, a few weeks, maybe a few years go by, you got some new perspective. You can look back and be like, oh my God, that was so funny. But at the time, it was miserable. At the time, it maybe caused you to go into a fit of rage. But that is what comedy is. Comedy is pain plus time. Now, if you have pain in your life, but you don't do anything about it, you ignore the signals, you take drugs to try to numb it out, you drink to try to numb it out, you go into sex or internet or workaholism or gaming or gambling, or you're trying to eat the pain away, screw the pain away, drink the pain away, and you're not dealing with it, that pain is going to last longer. But if you can bring some fun into it, if you can bring some lightness to it, if you can bring some perspective to it, it will heal it better. And one of the best ways to do that, one of the most productive and leverageable ways to do that, is to be a pain detective for your own pain, because the whole book, what's in it for them, is how to connect with people and how to connect with people you're aligned with. But you know how to make sure that you don't connect with other people? Is to be disconnected yourself. Because if you're disconnected from your own self, from your own source, from meaning, if you're not eating well, if you're not treating yourself like the $1 million racehorse, I'll come and speak to that in a moment, then it's going to be really hard to connect with other people. So I have very interesting ways to speak to the subject of connection, and I utilize the question, what's in it for them? And I utilize that as an intention of going, operating in the world, thinking what's in it for them, because if you pick the right people, you truly can get anything you want in life if you help the right people get what they want. And oftentimes what we think we want is not what we need. You know, you can say, well, you know, because what are we all selling? We're all selling feelings. You know, people don't go buy cars or buy phones or go to movies unless they want an emotional feeling. They want more woo and they want less ah. And there are certain things like exercise. I don't love exercising. I mean, I do it almost daily, but it's not like I'm one of these people that I really like working out. You know, what I like though is having worked out. I like the results of working out. You know, it's like that Somerset Maugham thing that my buddy Stephen Pressfield writes about in his book, The War of Art. It's not the writing that's hard, it's the sitting down to write that's hard. And when you sit down to write, it's not that I like writing, I like having written. That's what Somerset Maugham said. So there's a lot of things in life that we may not like the way to get there. You know, for instance, if you're a marketer and you're trying to sell a vacation, you know, on the beach or in the forest or whatever, you don't sell the travel, you sell the destination. No one wants to stand in line at the airport. No one wants to deal with packing and luggage and getting delayed flights and crappy food and, you know, sleep deprivation and some of the things that you encounter in traveling. All traveling is a pain in the ass. But when they're selling travel, they're selling the destination. So oftentimes, in order to muster up the courage to get to where we want to go, we have to be fixated on what's the end point? Why are we going there in the first place? And if the destination is worth it, and it's going to be amazing, it's going to give you a lot of woo, then you're probably more apt to go through the ah in order to get there. There's not a single person that ever won a marathon or even participated in a marathon or any sort of, you know, physical exertion that didn't go through a certain level or a lot of effort and pain and exertion in order to get there. But if they do it, there's something about earning it. That's why most people that win the lottery, like everyone wants more money. But if you look at lottery winners, the average person that wins the big lottery is in deeper debt a couple years after they won the lottery than beforehand, because anything that isn't earned is seldom valued. That's why people that have really great genetics and don't have to exercise and they look really great, if you follow those people for decades of their life, most of them become very unhealthy because they took for granted the fact that they just look good. But if you don't take care of the physical body, if you don't take care of it now, you're going to take time out for it later. That's my whole thing too. So it's like, I even have this line that I've put oftentimes on a refrigerator, or I'll put it in a journal. And I've been doing this, for 30 years, and sometimes I'll put it in front of me, but I've got it so embedded in my head, which is nothing tastes as great as being lean feels. Okay, I like pizza, I like crappy food, I love sugar, but I rarely indulge in it because there's consequences to that. Right? Do I wish I could eat it all day long? Yeah, of course. I mean, we'd all do drugs and party all day long if there were no consequences. But the fact is there's consequences, and I don't want those consequences. So there are certain ways of living that have consequences that I really like. Being nice to people, being caring, not bullshitting people, not lying, creating value, focusing not on what I want, but what on other people want. It's way easier to focus on what we want. People are often trained, what do I want? What do I want? And what I want though is I want people that care about me. I want genuine relationships with really caring, awesome, non-narcissistic people. I want to have a group of people that are givers. And so I have to live my life and set my life up in that certain way. And, and am I perfect? By no means. No, I'm not perfect at all. However, I've learned a lot of stuff over the years. And, people often ask about success. I had this funny line. One of my buddies, Jack Canfield, he's one of the authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul. First time he saw me speak, on stage, I said to these big, several hundred people in the audience, I said, if I would have known being successful was this much work, I would have stuck with being a loser. Because you oftentimes have no idea how much you have to put into getting to where you want to go. But what's the alternative though? And so it's sometimes good for young people to be a bit naive about all they're going to have to put into it. It won't make any sense to any young person that's watching this. You're going to get your heart broken, probably. I hope you don't. You're going to get through a lot of pain and get betrayed. I hope you don't, but it's probably going to happen. Life is not going to be what you expected it to be. You're going to realize that all of the pursuit of cars and money and status and beauty, you're going to eventually lose that stuff. If you're an addict, anything you put ahead of your recovery, you're going to lose. If you put your job, your relationship, your status, even your health ahead of your recovery, you're probably going to lose your health. You're probably going to lose your money. You're probably going to lose your job. You might lose your freedom and be incarcerated. Yep. So, part of it is as you go through life, it's not about winning the battle, it's about winning the war. And a lot of people will go through so many unnecessary battles and they will start wars with themselves and with other people because they're neglecting themselves. And I'll say, since I'm on this rapid tangent, the $1 million racehorse analogy is I say this, and I say this to people that are, $1 million plus entrepreneurs, because everyone that's in Genius Network, that's their criteria. You have to have at least $1 million a year business to join that group. And what I'll say is that if you had $1 million racehorse, where every time that horse ran a race, you win $1 million, how would you treat that horse? Well, you would give it the best trainers, the best track to run on, the best nutrition. You would give it proper rest and relaxation. You would give the horse all of the things needed in order for that horse to optimally perform. What wouldn't you do? You wouldn't have the horse up till 3 a.m. watching porn or snorting, drugs, or being sleep deprived. You wouldn't have the horse hanging around with losers. You wouldn't be overtraining the horse, putting him or her into so many different, wrong races, because you never win a race you don't want to be in, which is something my buddy Nick Peterson says. And so you would have that horse doing things that are the best for that horse, and you would not have that horse in things that are toxic. So I will say that to people. Then of course the punchline is, you're the $1 million racehorse. What are you putting into your body? Who are you hanging out with? Do you ask yourself, will this grow the relationship? Are you involved in relationships that are long-term or short-term not the right thing for you? Because people fetishize persistence, but persistence has to be taken in context. The best way to get out of a hole is to quit digging it. And if you are sometimes the best way to complete a project is to drop it. Sometimes the best way to relieve a lot of unnecessary pain is walk away from pull the nail out of your foot, extract yourself in the relationship. And oftentimes that takes courage, because confidence feels good. Wherever we're confident in areas, we oftentimes can become lopsided because we keep doing the things we're really good at, but then there's some area where we haven't addressed it. And there's a distinction here. If you spend your whole life trying to develop the areas where you're weak at the end of your life, you have a lot of really strong weaknesses. So I'm not suggesting just, strengthening your weaknesses. What I'm talking about is addressing things that need to get addressed. For instance, if you have not been to the dentist and you have a toothache, it is not going to get better with neglect or more pain pills. You may have to go to the dentist and figure out what the hell's wrong. You may have to get a tooth extracted. You may have to deal with an infection. But what's the alternative? So the problem with people that really hurt themselves is life is giving them all these signals, but they're neglecting it. So the $1 million racehorse is treat yourself like a $1 million racehorse, set up the conditions to do it, hang out with people that are supportive of you. And when I mean supportive, I don't mean yes people. Sometimes the most toxic people in your life are people that are applauding you while you're running in the wrong direction. Or if you're trying to do something that really requires ambition and some guts and they're trying to protect you, oh no, don't do that, don't do that. And that's where you have to make a decision of, am I willing to destroy anything in my life that is not excellent? And there comes a place where we have to destroy some of the things in our life that are not excellent. Doesn't mean you need to hurt people. It just means you need to change them. You need to shift them. And I think if you live that way, things will be better. And I think if you operate that way with asking the question, what's in it for them, you're going to have a lot more friends. You're going to go to bed better at night because you're really adding value to the world. And you live this message too. I mean, look, you spend a lot of time devoting things to educate people and help people, and you're dealing with a lot of people that have gotten themselves in trouble, bad trouble, and you have to make this. It takes a lot of courage to help people that have done bad things or have made mistakes. And so I've made the distinction. I follow the 12-step things. I've met a lot of people that have done rotten things in their life, but they found grace. And one of my dear friends is Andre Norman. And he spent 14 years in maximum security prison, and I've been working with him and funding him for years. But he hurt people. I mean, he armed robbery is what got him in prison. When he was in prison, he had 2 counts of attempted murder. And I said, what the hell is attempted murder for you? He goes, well, I stabbed the guy 11 times. I go, you stabbed the person 11 times, you didn't kill him? He goes, I was good at stabbing, not at killing. And I'm like, okay. And me and Andre have done a lot of interviews and stuff. You can find those online, but. The bottom line is this guy had an awakening, and it required incarceration. But if you looked at his life, our friend Dr. Don Wood says if you understood the atmospheric conditions in somebody's life, it would make sense why they do what it is that they do. And if someone understood, I'm the way I am because of the atmospheric conditions of my life. Robert's the way Robert is because of the atmospheric conditions of life. You're the way you are because of the atmospheric conditions of your life. And even when people are doing bad things, it doesn't justify violent behavior. It's not an excuse for people hurting other people. That's just not good, right? However, if you're aware of it, make amends, change the way you can, get help when needed, because oftentimes people cannot do it on their own. So there's no weakness in asking for help. There's no weakness in crying. Where the weakness is the inability to face the demons, to face the pain. And I believe we can not only change our own atmospheric conditions to become a better version of ourselves. I think if we do that, we change the atmospheric conditions around us. If you have a family that's not very functional, and that would almost account for most humans, because most people that are extremely dysfunctional think it's the other person who's dysfunctional. But the fact is, it's oftentimes just the whole family unit. And so my whole thing is like, there's a lot of addiction in my family. There's a lot of trauma in my family, and I wanted it to stop at some point, and that requires a certain level of leadership and responding to life, not reacting to life. Because what is responding? It's being responsible. It's responding with ability. That's what responsibility is. And I think the more that we can step into being a responsible person, things are going to work for the better. And that, and sometimes that sounds self-helpish and all that, which is not my intention. My intention is just live a life that works better than the one that was before, and try to be an example of that to other people. And I think if you just try for the next 5 or 10 people that you encounter, and you think, do I really like this person? What's the energy that they're bringing to me? What is it that I appreciate about them, or what annoys me? And you take a look at what that is, how they show up. Like I have this one thing in my book, What's in It for Them, where I be the person that you'd want to answer the phone for. And now many young people don't even use the phone as a phone. They text, they social media. But whatever ways you receive a message, the next 5 or 10 messages that come to you, what I would suggest is check with how your inner ding, which is what Reed Tracy says. How do you feel when you're looking at that message? What do you feel? Excited? Are you happy to hear from that person, or are you more like And if you're more like, is it because that person's an asshole, or do you owe them money or something and you're the jerk, right? So you have to really take a look at it and say, what is it? And oftentimes the things that annoy us about other people are oftentimes what annoy us about ourselves. Because it's really hard to be connected with other people if you're beating yourself up all day long, if your self-talk is super negative. So part of it is I want people to become their own best friend, and I want them to be the person they want to answer the phone for. And that comes from asking what's in it for them. And so I know I covered a million different things in that whole little rant there. But.
Incredible. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. So like when I said that you are synthesizing decades into this, that's what I'm talking about, right? All of that is neatly organized in this book, What's in It for Them.
So go get basically what he's saying is you need to go get this book.
Got to go get it.
Yeah, and I did record it in my voice too. So if you don't
did.
want to read, and you should, because what's that whole line? Yeah, not all leaders are readers, but I don't know any leaders that are not readers. I mean, literally none. And they don't always have to read books, but they are definitely people that educate themselves. And sometimes you listen. Who you are today, a year from today is going to be the books you read, the people that you meet, the activities that you do. And if you put different information into your head and you develop, there's one thing I have in the book, which is I'll give you a great strategy that's more difficult for most people to do. Even most things that are in the book are ELF. They're easy, lucrative, and fun. This one's relatively easy. Everyone will understand it, but for every, I'll say this to 500 people, you'd be lucky if one of them actually do it. So if you're one of the people that are willing to do this, this will transform your life. We have a postcard challenge. And one of the things before the internet existed, that's where I had to learn direct mail. So I hear all these people today, it's really hard to get a message out. And it's like, do you realize we had to put stamps on things? If you go back to the 70s, people were using X-Acto knives and whiteout in order to lay out an ad on a typewriter. They didn't have computers that did spell check or any of that stuff. And today we now have AI writing sales letters for people, right? So so I used to send a lot of snail mail, a lot of direct mail. And if you hand write 5 to 10 postcards a day, you don't have to do it 7 days a week. You can do it during business days, Monday through Friday, and you can take an entire month off. So you do it 11 months out of the next 12 months. If you send 5 to 10 postcards to people that you appreciate, people that you want to meet, clients that you work with, people in your life that have been impactful and important, your sphere of influence, people that you meet at a business that just provide good service, if you just physically mail that out, your network will be absolutely transformed. It'll probably be transformed in 6 months.
Yeah.
But if you do it for a year, you will do something that hardly anyone does. And I've been teaching this sort of stuff and doing it myself since literally 1990. So I've been at this for a very long time. And today, if you can't write, like if you're one of these people that are so disabled because of technology that you can't even read your own handwriting, which I can barely read my own handwriting. My handwriting sucks, but it's still legible enough for people to read the stuff that I write. It's just saying about thank you, and it's just dripping on people, not electronically. If you can't do it physically, which is still the best way, send 5 to 10 audios or video messages a day. Text them to people, email them. Use the tone of your voice. It may be awkward at first. That's okay. Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly, except like flying airplanes or doing surgery. You don't want to do that poorly. But the thing is do something every day that scares you or that is awkward. And that's different than going out and running in front of traffic. That would just be idiotic and stupid. But do something that is challenging for you. And the more you do it, you will get really good at it. And it is amazing how many people just don't realize the impact of doing something like that. So if you really want to build a great network and you want to really train yourself, people write these gratitude journals, but they oftentimes write it to themselves and they do it to just kind of puff themselves up. And that's great. But think about a gratitude journal that you make public, where you actually physically write the things you're grateful for about another person, about what's in it for them. They will love reading it. They will look at you as a person that shows up as a giver, because if you have nothing to give in terms of money, okay, or let's say time, attention, money, effort, and energy. If you don't have any money, you can give a little bit of your time, you can give them attention, you can give effort, you can give them some of your energy. And life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. And every single postcard that you send is a karmic deposit into that karmic bank account. And if you are a person that has hurt somebody, or you've committed crimes, or you've done something that people look down at you, but then you start making amends, using the 12-step philosophy is make amends whenever possible, except when to do so would injure yourself or others. So you have to be thoughtful about this. But just going out to someone and saying, you know what, I really wish that conversation would have went different, or I was short with you, or I did something wrong, and I sincerely apologize. And you're doing it to clean up your side of the street, even if they don't accept it. The fact is, it karmically does something when you put that out into the world. And I've been teaching, I have a few young people in Genius Youth that are doing this, because no young people, they don't do stuff like this. And it blows people away. They get job offers, they get opportunities, people want to work with them. And if you ever have to show up at the holiday party, and I know some of you are, send out some nice handwritten things to the people you're going to be interacting with over the holidays or into the new year. And I guarantee you, a little card that may take you freaking 1 minute to scribble something out and drop it in the mail, or a little audio or a little video, is going to completely change the way that people interact with you. And that's not a sophisticated strategy. It's just something that most people won't do.
And it works. I've gotten them from you, and it's much more personable. You can connect with somebody. I can see your face. I can see your expressions, and so.
Well, here, he hasn't even seen this yet, but when he came over, he brought one of my books, which I appreciate. He literally brought one of my books. And I said, can I sign your book? Not arrogantly, because people always like, they want pictures with me or they want autographs when I speak, and I'll go up and say to them, like, if you knew how many personal problems I have, I don't know if you'd want me to be signing your book or taking a picture. And I say that jokingly, but it's like, so I signed his book. And what I wrote here is I wrote, Robert, I hope my book gives you more woo and less ah. Thanks for living the message of this book. Because he does. And then I put a stupid little sticker of me, with him, because I happen to have some here at my house. But yeah, Robert lives the message of this book, and that's why I'm happy to sit and chat with anyone that he's reaching, because you're doing it right now. I mean, what's in it for them is, people that resonate with anything that we're talking about that's useful is great. And he's also building his business doing this stuff. He's putting value out into the world, and so that's the beauty of it, is you can monetize relationships, because what business exists where most of the money that comes from the business is not coming from bad news? Meaning, not all businesses are transforming people's bad news into good news. However, most actually are. If you're hungry, that's bad news. If you go to a restaurant, that's good news. If you break your leg, that's bad news. If you can go to a doctor that can help you, that's good news. If you get into legal trouble, that's bad news. If you can go to someone that can help you with that, especially if you're innocent, especially if you're wrongly convicted, I mean, that's horrible. But if you can get someone to help you, that's good news. And so most money made in the world is transforming other people's bad news into good news. And so people are like, what should I do for a living? How do I create value for other people? Look for the pain.
Yep.
Look where there's pain in the world. And if you can genuinely transform it, you will be in the transformation business, not the transaction business. The transaction business oftentimes is, okay, people are unhealthy. Let me sell them unhealthy food. People like drinking booze and alcohol. Let me get them drunk and intoxicated. That's not transforming other people's good news into bad news. That's taking bad news and making it worse. And so there's a lot of money that's made in the world that just creates bad news for people. Whereas I really hope that people say, okay, if you're thinking what's in it for them, then you're going to be way more conscientious about what you sell, how you sell it. Because not all lawyers are created equal. There's a lot of awful lawyers. There's a lot of awful marketers. There's a lot of awful people in the recovery world that exploit addicts. My suggestion is, whatever business industry you're in, be one of the good people. Be one of the people that you're proud to go home and know that you're doing the best job you can do. Because there are some positions that are really painful. I mean, some of the greatest heroes in the world are not famous celebrities and musicians or influencers. They're the hospice nurse. They're the single mom. They're the people that are working their asses off just to get their way through life. And if you can be one of those people that can help and encourage those people, I mean, I think karmically you will be rewarded for that, with how you feel. I think life will bring good things to you. And when I say I think, I still grapple with this, because a lot of times we look at, propaganda promoting evil assholes that seem to be getting rich, that, are admired in the world, and, deep down inside, they're just, they're taking advantage and stuff. However, there's plenty of examples of people that have lived incredible lives that had to go through tremendous adversity, but they just kept at it, and they did good stuff. And, I think at the end of your life, if you can look back and say, you know what, I encouraged people, I encouraged myself, I strove to connect with myself, I amended to the best of my abilities where I did wrong. I mean, I think you'll be a more fulfilled person. So but those are my thoughts. So take what you like and leave the rest.
Yeah, and Joe, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Yeah. When we spoke previously, I was saying that I think this framework is the solution to all sorts of problems in the world, if not all of the problems in the world, right? If more people just thought about what's in it for them rather than what's in it for me, just that base layer, things would be better. So
I hope so. Yeah, and I'm shaking my head because I hope that's the case, not because I think I'm told. Like, you evaluate it, read the book. If you like it, apply it in your life. And I think the world right now, with all of the propaganda and all of the fear porn and all of the leaders, not all, but a lot of the leaders in the world are lying through their teeth to people. The world needs givers that are really boundary to show up and show some real leadership and to be helpful human beings, because right now we are in there's global trauma that is happening at scale.
And I think if we operate this way with this sort of intention, the world not only needs it, I think it'll position you in a good place to take advantage of the opportunities, because there's a lot of them that need givers in the world. And so if we can empower the givers and share this sort of methodology with people, I just think it's, the world desperately needs people like this, and I hope that in some ways I can influence that a little bit. So those are my thoughts.
Amazing. Joe, thank you so much. One more time, buy the book.
Thank you, brother.
What's in it for them? Joe Polish.
Like nail polish or shoe polish, that's how you pronounce it.
That's Joe, founder of Genius Network. Joe, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank
All
you.
right, bye everybody.